Welcome, everybody. We're just starting here for everyone watching the recording. So just bear with me as we sit in relative silence as we let everybody file in. But we have a huge turnout today, which is not surprising. We're going to be talking about log lines, why they're important, how we can work through them, how they can help you, how they can hurt you, but mainly how to use them for our own development purposes. I shouldn't say mainly. We're going to go 50-50 a little bit. But there's a difference in terms of using it for brainstorming, but also using it for presentational, pitch purposes. And so we'll get into all that. I'm just going to let people file in here. I want everyone to be on before I get, into too many details. But as you pop in, as usual, as we like to do with these webinars, I'd love to hear where everyone is hailing from. I am currently in Wisconsin. I am no longer in Los Angeles. Left LA in June. It's a little sad to say goodbye. Still love the city. I'll be back plenty in the future. But just spending time in my little town in Wisconsin. And that's the beauty of this current world we live in, is that we can do what we love virtually from anywhere. And Hollywood is very virtual right now. Meetings are still primarily done via Zoom. There's not a whole lot of in-person stuff going on. Hopefully we can just get through this year and everybody stays safe and we don't have a resurgence of what has been going on for the past year and a half. Let's see what we have here. We've got Luca from Vicenza, Italy. Beautiful. Tempe, Minneapolis, Espanola, New Mexico, formerly Madison, Wisconsin, now Egypt. That is quite the jump. All right, Luke, good for you, man. Todd is originally from Wisconsin. Great. For Illinois, I love it. George from New York. Gavin from Gibraltar. I love it. Berlin, Los Angeles, Highland Park. Let's see. I can't remember the last time I was out in Highland Park, Winnie, but it's an up and coming area. So I hear it's all very positive out there. Santa Barbara, Ecuador, I love it. I love seeing our international writers pop in here. Orange County, this is not to say that I don't love our domestic writers. Birmingham, Alabama, originally from New Jersey. Carol is now in Los Angeles. Welcome to LA. Or that's Louisiana. I'm assuming LA. Nearish, Philly, Kennett Square, mushroom capital of the world. I love that. Lindahl from Orlando. Hi from ATX. ATX, is that, where's ATX? Not sure what that is. Atlanta? Austin. Ash says it's from ATX. Chicago, Illinois, one of my favorite cities. I'm only about an hour and 20-ish from the city right now. Redondo Beach, Ohio. David's St. Albans, Queens, beautiful. Missouri. See, this is fun. I just love seeing where everybody's from. I could probably spend most of the Zoom call just yelling out from where everybody's from. But ATX is Austin. Okay, cool. And Oakland, California. All right. Well, we had over 200 registrations for this webinar today. And we're barely halfway there, not even halfway there. So we might wait a little bit longer to get into, pure lecture stuff here. But for everyone involved, another one from Chicago, Burbank. Yeah, this is fun seeing where everybody's from. So anyway, before I go into like the heavy lecture stuff, some fun things to talk about. So much is going on with the ISA. We have an event on Wednesday, the 4th, where we're going to be bringing on a designer, an expert on how to build pitch decks, pitch books, pitch Bibles, whatever you want to call them. Marie, are you ready for us to submit our log lines while we wait? So I was going to mention that in a second, but let's hold off on submitting the log lines. In my little email that I sent out to everybody about 20 minutes ago, I mentioned that I am going to get to as many log lines as I can. There's no way I'm going to be able to read everybody. So I apologize ahead of time if I don't get to yours. Don't read into it. It's not like I'm going to, pick and choose which ones I want to read and go through. But I want to try to give as many people a chance as I can. So I also won't be able to spend like 20 minutes on one log line. It's going to be quick. I'm going to be reading the log lines. I'm going to be giving you my thoughts, little ways to maybe improve what's working well, what isn't. We'll probably spend at least half the webinar here doing all of that. So I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. Don't post the log lines. This is important. don't post your log lines in the chat box, because it's going to be really easy for me to miss them, because once people, put their, and it shows up as a paragraph in the chat box, once people put it there, it's going to scroll and I'm going to miss them. So when I say, when I prompt everyone, you can put it into the little Q&A portion at the bottom of the screen, right down here, as if you're asking a question, but you can just post the log line there. I'll go through as many as I can, and hopefully be of some assistance here. I think that's an important disclaimer, that it's kind of a two-sided thing. I, along with all of my cohorts with the ISA, we read log lines, I don't know how many a day, every single day, sometimes literally 7 days a week, especially everyone that's a part of the development slate and our contest world, going through writing gigs, getting submissions just naturally through the ISA, but also me as a Story Farm consultant, meaning my own little company's called Story Farm, and I'm working with writers all the time. So we're inundated with log lines. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I hesitate to say I'm an expert. I don't know if there is really a true expert on log lines. It's just such a specific thing. But I have a lot more experience than some. And so I'll do my best in terms of giving my feedback, and then trying to have all of you at least understand how we can use a log line and get someone's attention, but also to use it as a tool and a little bit of an exercise for you in the development process of your project. So anyway, and it'll be probably like 25, 30 minutes, you can just paste your log line into the Q&A box there. If you have questions, obviously put questions in the Q&A box, and I'll get to those questions. I'll probably do a little bit more of a focus on the questions, just because it can help spur some conversation. So Virginia just posted into the into the chat box. So let's not put our log lines into the chat box. Let's put them in the Q&A portion of the screen. Brian, welcome. Okay, so yeah, we have this cool event on August 4th, 1 p.m. LA time. Bringing in a designer and someone who knows a lot about how to arrange a pitch deck, pitch Bible, whatever you want to call them. It's going to be a fun one. Pay attention to the ISA's events page. Go to networkisa.org, like I'm sure all of you do very often, and check out the events page. Check out our ISA Insider page. It should be the place you go for entertainment news, business, and entertainment business news, because we pull from other sources like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, et cetera. So it's okay, Virginia. I'm using you as an example. I apologize. So we have a ton of stuff going on. I'm not going to make this long presentational sales pitch for what the ISA has going on, but you should be keeping up to speed. Read the newsletters, just scroll through them, see what's going on, stay up to date. It's one job that every writer needs to have and take seriously. We have to stay up to date what's going on in town. Study, just be aware of what's happening. In terms of what I'm doing with the Story Farm, I do have some room on my roster. If anybody wants to work one-on-one with me, you can go to thestoryfarm.org, or you can email me at max@thestoryfarm.org. I'm holding a retreat at the end of September. I do have some spots left, not many, very, very few spots left. And I've had quite a few inquiries about, what's going on and can I be a part of it. So if you are interested in the retreat, it's going to be a 4-day retreat. You have 2 weekend options. You're going to stay in this really huge farmhouse. You're going to have 6 other writers with you, plus me. It's going to be an intensive workshop-oriented type of class that I have for 2 of the days. But the primary focus is going to be quiet time to write. God forbid. Too many writing retreats have these heavy schedules where you actually don't even get any writing done. Anyway, you can email me with questions about that, or if you want to have somebody read your projects and I can give you notes. Okay, so log lines. I think what we all inherently understand about log lines is that it's really kind of that first line of defense. Maybe that's a horrible way of saying it. It's the first introduction anyone has to your project. Literally anyone. And so the important thing to remember there is that everything there is to know about your script and your story, whether it's a pilot or a feature or whatever you're writing. Everything there is to know. The person who's considering the script, or even just giving notes to a contest or something, and looking at that log line, they know nothing. So we have to come at it from that perspective. I mean, I know that's obvious, like duh, but we have to remember that. So that then forces us to take it seriously. Like, okay, how do I present my story in the shortest way possible so that they see, generally speaking, the type of situation they're going to experience as an audience over and over again. It's easy to hear that and for me to say it, a little bit harder to, let it just sink in. Like, what does that mean? Fully understand the situation. And I always use that word. The writers who are in my writing groups and work with me one-on-one, and now, of course, all the webinars that I put on, I use that word all the time because I guess I just want to emphasize the fact that story is way too open-ended of a word. We all have this semblance of an idea of what a story is, but a situation is much more specific. And that word encompasses multiple things. It has conflict, it has a goal, some form of intent. There's probably some form of a relationship that's at least impacted. A situation can be in a moment, it can be over the course of a scene, it can be over the course of an act, it can be over the course of a whole, 3 acts if you're writing a feature, 5 acts, whatever. But it can also be over the course of an entire TV series. So as a quick example, and I didn't write this down, I should have written this down. But in Breaking Bad, the situation there is that you're going to see a science teacher working with a young, naive drug dealer to make and sell meth in order to provide for the science teacher's family. Every single episode, some version of that situation we're going to see. And sorry, I'm shaking my camera. We know we're going to see that. So it's that idea that then is related, that idea of a situation, or the word situation, that is then related to the word hook. It's basically the same concept I'm trying to get across. Situation and hook are pretty much the same things. Hook is what, obviously, it's called a hook because it hooks the audience in. We're like, oh, that type of situation is interesting. I'd like to see that happen over the course of 2 hours. We as an audience, if we're watching a movie, we're going to be spending at least an hour and a half of our lives' time experiencing a situation that recurs over and over and over again. So I needed to open up with that, even though it isn't directly related to here's how you write a logline, but it is related because that's what we need to notate in our logline. We have to hit that as quickly and succinctly and early as we can. And I have a list of situations or hooks that I'll read off of some very outdated movies. And I apologize, I'm going to have to update this, but at least we know the movies and we're all familiar with them. And you'll see what I mean by how you can reference the hook, the situation. What makes it a log line, we don't want to just like, as a little quick example, in Liar Liar, I always use this example, I know, and everybody's probably rolling their eyes. It's just easy, everybody understands it. The situation in Liar Liar is obvious, right? We all know it. It's a lawyer who is unable to tell a lie for 24 hours. That's the situation. That's not the story, though. And that, I think, is so essential for us to differentiate. The situation is that's fine, but what makes it a story? The relationships involved. And so that's another buzzword that I almost wrote in caps in the chat box that we have to make sure is referenced in a log line. And that's difficult. And this is why log lines are hard to write, because after a while, you've got like this huge paragraph and like, okay, I can't have a log line that long. But that's when the artistry of you as a writer needs to really come into play, because we have to have word choice. We have to be succinct and pithy with our word choice, pithy meaning specific, and frugal with our word choice, and try to encompass what this relationship looks like within the situation. And how do you do that? It's primarily by way of referencing character flaw or personality or belief. And I'll go through some examples so you can see that specifically. So those are the 3 things I really want to hit, right? Situation, well, I guess it's kind of 2 things. Situation / hook in relationships. The relationship is what ultimately creates the story. But then the 3rd thing, that's where my brain was going, is with a goal. And so like my coursework spells out in thecraftcourse.com, which, by the way, I can give everybody 50% off. You can get the course for $50. I mean, we should probably raise the price, but it's $50. You keep the course forever. It's a 12-week course, self-guided. You can go to thecraftcourse.com. You can email me at that email address. If you want to do it, I can give you a little code. It's $50. Anyway, so what my course details here, the 4 primary elements of a logline. Elements meaning what is presented within the logline. Obviously, I was referencing situation, relationship, and goal, but these are pretty much referencing the same thing, but just in a more specific way. So a logline presents these 4 elements. Establishes a character with a problem. It proves genre through word choice, right? You're going to be, if it's funny, you want to try to come up with some funny words. If it's horrific, you want to use horrific words. It's going to show the unique hook through the presentation of a goal. That's a tough one to wrap our brains around. I'll explain that in a second. And then it provides overall the situational recurring moment. All of that shows us a story. Now, the tricky part with the logline, and I'll explain what I mean by the unique hook through the presentation of a goal. I lost my train of thought there. Where I was going with, so all of those 4 elements present within the logline is, yes, your story. But what we have to also remember is that we can't just tell the whole story in a logline. We don't have enough room, right? In terms of words, it has to be pretty short. So what you have to do is present the possibility of the story to the reader. So the reader's like, oh, I can see what might happen. That's an interesting situation because of these types of characters and what they want and what they're striving for, it's goal, within this situation, which overall presents the hook, right? You have characters, plural, relationship, within a situation which just inherently has conflict because there's a goal involved. And what does conflict naturally present? An obstacle. Obstacle is usually by way of another character, and that character has a motive. And then you have, I think I might be repeating myself, the overall hook in situation. All of those elements provide for a story summarized into a logline. It sounds a lot easier said than done. And I wanted to be relatively quick because I know everybody's going to be presenting their loglines and I'll be giving you notes and thoughts. So let me, before I go into the next little topic there, shows the unique hook through the presentation of a goal. Let's just think of that statement, and I'll even just put it in the chat box so everybody can just kind of read it. I'm not trying to, make it sound like this is some genius concept or anything, but unique hook through the presentation of a goal. Like a hook is one thing, right? You've got, and this is, I guess, where I could go into some of the situation references that I have written out. I don't want to call them log lines, and I'll explain why. But a hook in situation is not enough to present a story, like I was saying. What you need is the goal, right? They have to be striving for something. They have, and for a reason, and that then inherently has stakes. And when I say inherently, is that I mean that you can't just state in the logline, here is what at stake. It has to be assumed by the reader. And I think that is the most difficult concept for any writer to consider, myself included. In other words, the audience and what the audience is already assuming immediately upon reading whatever you're submitting to them. They're trying to participate in whatever it is that you're sending, TV pilot, a pitch Bible, a feature, a short film, whatever. Our brains are just naturally used to participating in something that we're reading, whatever it is, a journal or a newspaper article or whatever. We're going to be assuming things as we're reading it, right? And when it comes from a place of story, we're going to be thinking ahead just a little bit. Oh, that character might go and, have this type of moment. It might end up like that, or, oh, this, you might even go negative, oh, this is so cliche, or it's predictable, whatever, but that's what our brains do. And we have to trust the audience that they are going to be doing that. So when you're writing that log line, it's one way to keep yourself from going too long in terms of just overwriting the log line and having this giant paragraph. Present the character who has a flaw, and I'll even read a little bit of a templated example here. I'll put it in the chat box so you can see. But you're going to have a flawed character experience some kind of opportunity or setup event to pursue a goal, whether reluctantly or actively, with another character. And that other character is probably going to be supporting that main character in some way, pushing that character into a situation to assist. As they then go through obstacles within the situation, unable to tell a lie for 24 hours. And it's heightened because in Liar Liar, it's during the biggest case of his career. While being, forced to overcome the motive of the villain. I'm trying to purposely be very basic. Until you're going to reference some kind of twist, right? There's a major complication within the situation that may not be expected, at least of the main character, and that changes things. So you're having a little bit of a structural approach to it. You're referencing characters and relationship. That relationship is assumed by way of just the types that they are. Some stories are very specific to relationship progress, right? There's an evolution of how a relationship evolves, or evolution of a relationship. And that's what the movie's about. Lady Bird is technically just a whole bunch of relationships that Lady Bird is experiencing. The primary one with her mom or parents, but just trying to find her place in the world and to get out. That's her goal. The problem is that she feels stuck because of her family. It's basic. You have a goal, you have a problem. Here's what she's going to try to do to get out of it. And that's basically how we have to present just about any logline. Here's this ridiculously long template logline. It's in the chat box. I'll read it for everybody watching the recording. Your brain is eventually going to melt as you hear all of this, but that's kind of on purpose because these are just placeholders that we can use to help develop our logline. Eventually, you're going to shorten it. But when a flawed hero experiences some kind of an event, setup event, that either introduces him to a secondary helper or that secondary helper pushes him toward a new adventure in order to overcome an obstacle, the problem, usually in the form of a villain or an opponent within a very specific type of situation. And that's really broad, I know. But then a twist occurs that sends the hero in a new direction, completely changes everything. So what you see with that template is that there's a little bit of a structure to it. You have this when, then, and until kind of placeholder process, right? You're allowing the reader to kind of flow with the story, but you're also going, and this is the other kind of half of an important note I need to make about loglines, and something that I see all the time when reading loglines. We need to get past just the setup. In a feature, we get past just the first act. We have to have reference to what the second act looks like, or what might occur in that second act. What's the extension of the middle of your story? In a TV series, it's basically the same thing. You're then detailing the process of a relationship evolving over the second act, or the problem evolving. You're trying to present in the logline the opportunity for a lot of different moments within one representation of the moment. That didn't make any sense. I apologize. The hard part there is that you have to kind of have like a half a sentence or the 3/4 of a sentence to provide whatever this recurring situation is going to be. That's the hardest part about writing a logline, and there's no really easy way around that other than just practicing and trying to get it down to as few words as possible. But you present what that situation is. But then when, like in Liar Liar, when you add the son and the fact that Jim Carrey's an absent father, you can add reference to an ex-wife and how she might be marrying somebody else. You have all these relationships that are ultimately affecting the situation of the fact that he can't tell a lie during the biggest case of his career. So there are all these layers of problems. Yes, it could be very easy for the logline to be seriously long. When developing your logline, though, don't worry about length. Just write it out. What is this? When this, blah, 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 then this, et cetera. And then we've got until, and you're following through a little bit of the structure. Who cares if the first, iteration of your logline is really long? Just write it out. Eventually, you can start pulling words out. You can rewrite a phrase. You can try to trim some things. Don't use the name of your character. That's a big one. Don't even bother, unless it's about someone really famous that everybody knows, Muhammad Ali or Mickey Mantle or whoever the famous person might be. you can use the famous person's name because that's part of the conceit of your story, right? That's what's unique about it. It's a story about this person. And we as the reader already have kind of these preconceived notions about that person. If it's not a true story, if it's not about someone famous and well-known, don't even bother. Just reference the character by way of that character's flaw or personality or issue. And I'll get into some references there. So anyway, what that little template does, it allows, and you can copy and paste this and just keep it in a Word doc or something. It allows you to just put your own little project in there. Shouldn't say little, as if I'm being condescending. I don't know why I said little. I apologize, but put your project in there. Put those story elements in there. Main character, secondary character, opponent, what the second act looks like, what, some structural references, the setup event, the midpoint complication, maybe even draw it out to the major low point that's going to occur. With a TV series, you got more work to do. You have to have a log line for your pilot, which encompasses the process of that episode and the situation of that episode. And that situation of the pilot encompasses the situation of the whole series. So you're setting up not only the setup to the episode, but the setup to the whole series. That in and of itself is enough for the brain to explode. But you have to write a pilot episode log line, a first season log line, which encompasses the process of the whole story evolving through multiple storylines, which then also means multiple characters. So it might be a little long, and that's okay. And then the whole series log line. The series log line is going to be a little bit more broad. You should have some kind of character reference, probably just the main character, and the overall situation. Stranger Things, you've got, Will Byers, who's been kidnapped, and his friends are trying to, figure out what happened, but they find out that there's this monster that, even that's horrible. But you just get into the basic situation of what we're going to be experiencing every time we tune in for the series logline. Okay, let me give you some examples here. I see questions coming in, which is great, and I'll get to those. Let me read through some of these situational statements, whatever you might want to call them. And again, these are really old movies. In a way, it's a good thing because we're all aware of them. But what you'll notice is they all have something in common. And when the reason I'm reading these is because it's specific to the situation of the story. It isn't necessarily a log line. And I'll explain why it's a little different. Okay, the first one, this is Grosse Pointe Blank, the movie Grosse Pointe Blank. An elite assassin in the midst of an emotional crisis is forced to return to his hometown to carry out a hit on the same weekend as his 10-year high school reunion, while simultaneously reconnecting with the love of his life. And I'll just post this in the chat box so everybody can read it. Now, what that's referencing, an elite assassin in the midst of an emotional crisis. Great. You've got a character and a flaw. It's a little loose, but we understand his emotional, personal situation outside of the overall concept that we're presenting for the story. We understand elite assassin, emotional crisis. He's forced to return to his hometown to carry out a hit. It's a setup event on the same weekend as his 10-year high school reunion. Overall situation, right? We've got a hit, like a literal assassin hit that needs to be taken out during a class reunion, while reconnecting with the love of his life. So this is as close to a log line as the situational statement might come. What it's missing is then what? Like, what's the goal there? He has to what? Everybody, if you've seen the movie, he has to actually save this love of his life's father from a rival assassin. So there's a little bit of a goal that's presented, right? Obviously, there's a goal with the hit, and just an emotional crisis kind of personal goal of figuring out his life. But we can go a little bit further with that in terms of presenting the story by way of an opponent trying to stop this main character from doing something. And that's key. All right, I'll read another one. You'll probably know which one this is because the title is in the situation. A pair of devoted and inspired wedding crashers get trapped on an island with a wealthy and powerful family who are soon going to find out who the guys really are. So that's the situation of Wedding Crashers, right? What we aren't referencing are the story elements, the relationships that are presented, mainly Owen Wilson and Rachel McAdams. Like, that's the primary core relationship there. He stays on the island because he's falling in love with this girl. that then starts to provide more of the story. There's a goal. He wants to do this, or he must do this, or she has to do this, or this horrible thing might happen to her. We want to present the situation with a goal. Now suddenly you have a reference again to what I was saying, unique hook, right? Goal, situation. Let's see. Let's get a good one here. I don't have to read all of them. This is pretty good in terms of being close to a log line, but we're still not necessarily referencing such relationship or goal. So a chauvinist advertising executive who, due to a freak accident involving an electric shock and feminine products, suddenly has the ability to hear the thoughts of every woman around him. So that's what women want with Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt. So that's the situation, right? The situation is the fact that he can hear women's thoughts. It's not a story yet. So we need to be hitting a process of structure with goal, with the problem, and why this could become a problem, other than the fact that you're just constantly going crazy with thoughts of other people's thoughts in your head. So we want to get to that process of presenting what this goal, what the character has to do, what the goal is. Let's do, okay, so this is a good example of how this is not a log line. It is a little bit of a reference to situation, but we can go much further. And if you've seen the movie, you'll obviously realize, but this is Brokeback Mountain, the deep but secret love affair between two cowboys in Wyoming in the 1960s. Obviously a reference to the situation. And because we hadn't really at the time seen a movie like that, it's okay, I can see the uniqueness there. But there's so much more to that story than that, right? So you have to come from a place of when, then, and until to at least allow the structural approach. You provide goal. What are these characters wanting? Obviously each other, but the problem is not only the fact that they're homosexuals in that time, but there are other story elements going on. One of them's married and it's not working. And there are other things happening in the story that we're going to want to reference. So I think those are good examples in terms of close to a log line, but we can go a little bit further. And it's going back to this idea of how we at the ISA and myself with, all the writers I work with, I see so many log lines that are just setups. They're just presenting the potential for something, but we're not going a little bit further to see how some of that potential can pay off. And because we're not referencing what the second act is or what the middle of the story is going to be. We never want someone to read a log line and then go, well, then what happens? I mean, you could argue, well, couldn't that be a good thing? They're trying to be engaged and guess what is happening? Not really. We want them to be able to see what could happen and go, ooh, okay, I see the moments there. I can see what that situation is going to present in terms of what I will literally be watching. So we want to go past the setup. So, I mean, that was a lot in a short amount of time. And obviously I could go longer in terms of the process of creating a log line, but we do have questions, log lines to present. But yeah, I'll probably just go into that. I mean, what you want to make sure, and as a little bit of a reference or review, is that you're referencing these four things in every log line in some way, shape, or form. You've got a flawed hero, a secondary helper, which is just my term for like a Doc Brown to Marty McFly, Sam to Bilbo. It could be a mentor, but it could also just be it's the secondary lead in the story. The second act obstacle is number 3. That second act obstacle is a direct reference to ultimately goal within a situation, because a situation inherently provides conflict. So that second act obstacle is going to be difficult, right? There's a difficult process of achieving the goal. And then of course you have the fourth thing, a villain or opponent. And usually that opponent is presenting some form of that major obstacle in the second act. Reiterate the 4 elements. So I just hit those components. The 4 elements are, hold on. Okay. Here, I'll just put it in the chat box. But establishes a character with a problem, just like in Grosse Pointe Blank. He's going through an emotional crisis and he's an assassin. Like that's a problem for an assassin. He should not be emotional for one thing, much less going through a crisis. So establishes a character with a problem. More often than not, it's a personal problem or a stage of life problem. They are 16 years old and she just found out she's pregnant. That's a problem for this girl. Maybe. I shouldn't be too broad with that, but you get the idea. It proves genre. You're going to be doing that with word choice. You want to make sure that if it's supposed to be funny, it should read funny. it shows the unique hook through the presentation of a goal, which I talked about. And then it provides the situational recurring moment. In a lot of ways, those last two are kind of connected, right? The unique hook with a goal is what is ultimately creating that recurring moment, that moment that happens over and over again. So we need a reference of what that situation is going to be, what that recurring moment is going to be within your logline. Let's see here, Jane, what if there was a game that could save the world? Okay, so that looks like it's a logline. When black hole stalks our galaxy, a brilliant game designer enters to prove aliens are not our enemies. Okay, so let's hold off on presenting loglines. And if you want to put your logline in front of me, put it in the Q&A box. And it's like right at the bottom of your screen there, you put it in there and I'll review loglines there. But just since I read Jane's, it's okay to start with a question when you're pitching it, when you're speaking verbally with someone. Get to the process of when. So what I'm seeing here is we've got when a black hole stalks our galaxy, a brilliant game designer enters it to prove aliens are not our enemies. So what happens, I guess, is kind of, again, like what happens once he goes out there, and what's the game, and how does the game provide a situational moment within the middle of the story. It's an interesting setup, but this is another example of how we're providing concept more than character and relationships. And character and relationships is ultimately what will be providing story. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. So this is not me critiquing the concept so much. It's more of looking at the log line because I want a little bit more out of that. When a black hole stalks our galaxy, a brilliant game designer enters to prove aliens are not our enemies. So a lot of things pop up. It's like, why is he trying to prove aliens aren't the enemies? What might happen if he fails? Is he going to actually stop the black hole from happening? What are some of the other relationships popping in there? So, the good thing is that it's really short, Jane, so you can expand on that. I'm one of those people that, and yeah, everybody, if you have log lines, you can put it in the Q&A box now. But I'm a huge proponent for give me a little bit more. I don't care if the log line's a little long. Obviously, you're not going to have this giant paragraph. It's going to be one sentence, preferably. Sometimes we go into two and it's like, let's be careful with two sentences. It's called a log line, not lines. Okay, let's see here what we can do. Okay, let's just try to start from the top here. We've got about 25 minutes. I'll try to get through this. Actually, Amanda is asking a question. Amanda, do you want series or pilot log lines for TV shows when we get to that point? Yeah, so I did touch on that. For TV writers, you're going to have a series log line, pilot log line, first season log line. So and you'll be including that in your pitch Bible. And the reason I'm calling it a pitch Bible is because it's not really a true TV Bible. A TV series Bible is like this 60-page document and has everything. In a pitch Bible, it's going to be 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 pages. And one of the first pages is going to just show just those 3 log lines. Boom, pilot, first season, series, or you can reverse it, series first, etc. Okay, let's see, Shahar. So project name, note in the Oak logline. Following the death of her longtime patient, a broke home care provider goes on a quest of faith to find his estranged son, bring him to his father's grave, and save his house from a hostile takeover by her corrupted employer. I feel pretty good about that, Shahar. I like that we have a little bit of a stage of life following the death of her longtime patient. A broke home care provider goes on a quest of faith to find his estranged son, bring him to his father's grave, and save his house from hostile takeover. So the only comment would be how these things feel a little separate. Save his house from a hostile takeover by her corrupted employer. How is that in relation to find his estranged son and bring him to his father's grave? Like, what's so essential about getting this estranged son to the father's grave? We want to have a level of stakes provided. I understand the hostile takeover for the house, but we want to try to combine those things. That would be my only note there. But it sounds like a sweet emotional story. And so you're hitting the tone and genre pretty well. Okay, Roy. After a traumatized, timid wife flees her abusive, corrupt husband and meets a sympathetic master hypnotist who empowers her, she finally gains the confidence to turn the tables on lawlessness. Okay, really great start, Roy. This is kind of what I was referencing about how it feels more like just setup, and we're not getting into then what? So she finally gains the confidence to turn the tables on lawlessness. What does that mean? And so we want to get into what that looks like, so meets a sympathetic master hypnotist who empowers her, which then forces her or pushes her on this revenge seeking quest to achieve this, or with the support of this person, or however relationship reference you could have. We want to get into the reference to what that second act looks like. What's the middle of the movie? Okay, let's see. So moving on to Virginia, I think, did we hit the no? Okay. An impulsive kleptomaniac cleans up her act after a painful education from two hardcore thieves. Okay, so Virginia, we want to know what that looks like. And I know that sounds like such a broad, lame statement or question, but impulsive kleptomaniac is fun. And she's trying to clean up her act, which I like. There's a personal want there. After a painful education from two hardcore thieves, I don't know what that means. And I don't mean that to be harsh. It's more of, what does that mean? Like, what does it look like? What's the situation going forward as she's trying to clean up her act? What problem here is going to be created more and more moment after moment because she needs to achieve this situation? So we probably need some kind of a setup event reference. What's the opportunity for her to achieve something, which will then help her clean up her act? And sometimes it's outward, it's the surface level goal that this character has to achieve, or else this bad thing might happen. So we want a reference to what the middle of that story is going to look like. All right, next one. After a neighbor loses control and kills their sister, two young brothers try to control their lives and their desire for revenge. So again, cool setup. I don't know what the second act is. What does it look like? Two young brothers trying to control their lives and their desire for revenge. In what situation are these characters being active? They're setting out to do something, but I don't know what it is. So we want to get specific to that, because that ultimately is what your second act is. And since your log line is so short, you can go further with that. Get it, use commas, make it a run-on sentence. Nobody's going to be judging the grammar all that much unless you're really running on. But you can go further. You can give us a little bit more. It sounds like a cool setup. Barbara, when a recent widow, Eve, inherits the house she fled as a 5-year-old, she and her own children must confront a legacy of unspeakable evil and solve the mysteries that have haunted her family for generations. Cool. So I love haunted house stories. Right now, Barbara, and I promise I do not mean to be harsh, it feels like just about every haunted house movie we've seen. You're writing this probably because there is a unique element to it that's going to make it a little different than some of these other haunted house movies that we've seen. We see a lot of people who move into old houses and then try to figure out why it's haunted. We love seeing those. That's why we tune into the haunted house movies. But what makes this one different, and how you can reference that, is what the mystery is. Like I always say this about The Sixth Sense. If you were writing The Sixth Sense, you were pitching The Sixth Sense, you're trying to present a log line for it. If you leave out the fact, and this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it, but if you leave out the fact that Bruce Willis was dead the whole time, that's the whole movie. The whole movie is based on the twist. So don't leave out the big twist, because that's ultimately what is going to be making your haunted house movie the most unique. Right now, it feels like every other haunted house movie we've seen. And please, Barbara, don't feel like, oh my gosh, it's so harsh. You're going to get much worse commentary and feedback from other people in the industry. Maybe I shouldn't say that definitively, but hopefully that helps, Barbara. I think you can go into what the big mystery is. Also, when writing log lines, no need to use the name of the characters. Reference what the flaw is. It's probably a little bit more than recent widow, right? There's some other thing going on with her personally, hopefully. Okay, Mike, an Afro-American dream researcher, creates software that he hopes gives him the ability to share a dream with another person. The only problem is the software transports he and his wife to an 1859 slave auction block. How do they survive and get back to their bed? Okay, it's a great situation. I think what I don't know is genre. Is this a serious drama, or is it kind of comedic? Because a lot, I think, will have to do, like, a lot of how a reader consumes that, or a producer, manager, whoever consumes that log line is what type of, like, compared to Barbara's, I know that that's a scary movie. There are horror elements, ghost elements. I know how I'm supposed to feel there. So with this one, is it a heavy drama? I mean, there's some very serious story elements here, obviously, with going back to slave auction block and
I'm not sure I understand.
Siri doesn't understand. But so I don't immediately think this is an outright comedy. Situationally speaking, though, it is kind of wild that they're trying to create one thing and yet somehow it actually literally transports them somewhere else. So we'd like to define that a little bit. But instead of asking a question at the end of the log line, tell us what happens. Just say this is what they have to do. And how it becomes more complicated. Like, the problem of, okay, the software transporting them to 1859 slave auction block. Yes, that's a complication, but that's probably really early on in the story. Your actual story, the second act, is how they're trying to survive and getting back to home. And the fact that you're referencing get back to their bed, that sounds kind of funny to me. So again, we want to make sure that we're defining genre and that we're detailing, I don't want to use the word detailing. We're referencing what the overarching recurring situation, recurring moment is going to be in the second act. Susan, when Ireland's notorious pirate warrior Grace O'Malley loses family, fleet, and army to England's colonial governor, she must convince his queen and her arch enemy, Queen Elizabeth I, to restore her means of rebellion. Okay, so obviously a period piece, big sweeping drama out in high seas. You've got pirate, all these different political references. Very cool. I like that it's from a marketing standpoint, we have a female empowered woman. But what we're not presenting is how she does restore her means of well, that's not what let me read it again. Loses family, fleet. She must convince his queen and her arch enemy, Queen Elizabeth I. So when we say we must convince, does this mean, and I'm overly exaggerating here just to make a point, so don't read into it too much, Susan. Are we watching for 2 hours someone trying to convince the queen of something? Obviously not. But technically speaking, that is what the log line is showing us. So it's fine when, in her attempt to convince the queen to restore her means of rebellion or whatever, she has to do this, or this crazy thing happens, or this ongoing situation occurs, or this, major complication. We want to get into the second act. Native American teen in an alternate world reluctantly takes his vision quest, only to discover he must die to save his tribe from the white horde. Okay, you had me until white horde. I think it sounds cool. I like that. You have Native American, you have teen. Alternate world was a little confusing. Alternate world reluctantly takes his vision quest. So I don't want to make suggestions or anything, Mike, but in a way, I would almost rather that this was just a Native American teen going on his vision quest. But then finds out that he has to die to save his tribe. I don't know what the white horde is. So I think with this one, we're going to want some more information. And the word discover is a little passive. Only to discover he must die. So is the whole second act his vision quest? Possibly. But then what does that vision quest look like? The complication is that death is the only way to save his tribe. Now it's staying active as opposed to discover he must die. Does he die, or what's the process of possibly dying? And then a little bit more, I think, in terms of the white horde situation. A lot is working there. Alternative world was a little confusing because I wasn't sure if is this a fantasy world we're seeing? It may make more sense to keep him in the real world. Okay, let's keep going here. So the question, do you still use the same process when coming up with a logline for a short script? Are there any differences? No real differences. You're still going to be referencing those elements. It's that much more of a reference to the situation that we're going to be experiencing as the audience. Short films are primarily used to send a message. What do I want the audience to learn or feel, experience while experiencing this situation on screen? So we want to make sure that situation is clear. Amanda, after refusing a marriage proposal, A hotshot executive finds herself in a fun romance with a younger employee, much to the dismay of her meddling ex, and soon everything collapses. So let's see, we've got, obviously, even without referencing, Amanda wrote feature rom-com. It's called Boss Lady and the Boys. Just by seeing that, of course, I see that this is a romantic comedy. But I'm able to see it also in terms of word choice in the log line. Refusing a marriage proposal, I like, because we have a stage of life reference right early on. Hotshot executive, that's kind of fun. Finds herself in a fun romance is a little passive, Amanda. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. Does someone pursue her? Does she pursue somebody else? Is she forced into this romance for reasons of stakes, like she has to, like Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, like they have to get married just because she's going to get deported or whatever. So find herself in a fun romance with a younger employee, much to the dismay of her meddling ex, and soon everything collapses. So the soon everything collapses, that's your second act. I hate to be so blunt about that, but that's technically what we're going to see, right? So much to the dismay of her meddling ex, what if does the meddling ex do something then that ruins not only the relationship, but also takes down the entire company? And in order to save what's most important to her, she has to quit the company or whatever. We want to get into the specifics of the second act situation. Let's see, as we go further here. Brilliant young forensic scientist never set out to bring down the entire United States government, as he uncovered the most diabolical conspiracy in history at the cost of his career, family, and very nearly his life. So I think there might be a goof. Brilliant young forensic scientist never set out. I think that might be a mistake, Jack. Sets out to bring down the entire U.S. government as he uncovers the most diabolical conspiracy in history at the cost of. So this, I hate to be blunt, Jax, it's way too vague. I'm not sure what it looks like. I'm not sure what the conspiracy theory or conspiracy is. At the cost of career, family, and nearly his life. I like the stakes. The stakes are pretty obvious. This is a thriller, probably some form of a political thriller. But we have young forensic scientist. What does that mean for the situation? How is the forensic science going to be uncovering the conspiracy? And I want to know what the conspiracy is, because that ultimately is probably going to help with the uniqueness of the project, but then also the steps he takes in order to uncover it. That's, again, another reference to how we want to see what that second act is. Mike, boy, we've got some people like throwing 4 or 5 log lines out. I'm going to try to give other people some chances. Sorry, guys. Alexis, are we okay to send our log lines now? Oh, here we go. Yes. After the tragic death of her wife, despite being considered a suspect in her murder, Betty must push through the grief and solicit a madam to run an illegal brothel out of the back of the strip club she owns in order to repay a $20,000 debt to keep it from being foreclosed. Okay. There's a lot in there. I like the world. I like the problem at hand because it's personal to the main character. So, tragic death of her wife, despite being considered a suspect, Betty must push through the grief and solicit a madam to run an illegal brothel out of the back of the strip club she owns in order to repay a $20,000 debt to keep it from being foreclosed. So, I'd like a little bit of a reference to why the strip club is so important to her. I know that might sound like a silly question, like, well, it's her business. But, is it a beloved strip club? I don't know, that sounds ridiculous. But we've got, she solicits a madam to run an illegal brothel. Could it be more interesting? And this is a little bit more of a creative development note. Could it be more interesting if this madam is the one who solicits her to run the illegal brothel with this at stake? Or, this madam presents an opportunity, an offer to repay this debt by running this illegal brothel. But again, a lot of this reads like a setup. I'm not sure what then happens. How does this become an overall story that evolves between pages 30 and 80, your second act of the feature? I want to know what that process is going to look like. How is this a problem going forward? How does it get worse? How is an opponent coming into play? Who is the opponent? Is it the madam? Does the madam do something to her? Or, so I'd like to see the process of this unfold a little bit more. A dying, neglectful husband challenges his wife to go on 3 dates or follow his planned event in death. She agrees until she learns he set up the dates. Her revenge with a younger coworker backfires when she develops feelings and must outsmart her techie husband to live her authentic life. So I think there's a way to rework the log line, Julia, because for one, it's 3 sentences. We want to try to maybe just rearrange what's presented first. So we've got, like, I'm not sure who the main character is for one. Is it the wife or the husband? Because we're starting with dying, neglectful husband, challenges his wife to go on 3 dates, but then, she agrees until she learns he set up the dates. So she was frustrated that she can't choose the dates. Her revenge with a younger coworker backfires when she develops feelings and must outsmart her techie husband to live her authentic. So that really is the core of the story there, right at the end. Develops feelings and must outsmart her techie husband to live her authentic life. So it could be flipped a little bit, a soon-to-be widow with feelings for a younger coworker is forced to go on multiple dates with the husband, or because the husband wants. So I guess that's also a little bit confusing in my head in terms of why is the husband wanting her to go on these dates, and then why would she feel like she would have to keep that secret in some way? Her revenge with a younger coworker backfires. It's because I guess he wants to choose her next husband. So that's, I think, the core of the issue. He's trying to control who she ends up with after he dies. So there's just a little bit of clarity there. We just want to try to get this from a process of structure a little bit more, and more focus on the female character. It seems like she's the lead. Yeah. Hopefully that helps, Julia. Sorry. Let's see. Grant, following his swim coach father's drowning at family-owned Willow Swim Club, a gay Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and former high school swim champion reluctantly returns to his ultra-conservative, politically divided suburban Chicago hometown, where he soon discovers something evil festering below the surface, making him believe his father's death wasn't an accident. I love all of that, except I don't know what happens. I know it sounds really harsh, but I don't know what the second act is. We have a great setup. I love all the obvious situation of him going back to this hometown. What's festering below the surface? Why is it evil? What does it look like? What does he have to do to overcome that evil? And then, obviously there's a mystery that he's going to be solving. So we can probably trim back some of the references of a lot of the character stuff, following his swim coach father's drowning at family-owned club, or just following his swim coach father's drowning. A gay Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter returns to his ultra-conservative suburban hometown. It's probably enough. If you say ultra-conservative, we're going to assume that it's probably politically divided. So you can trim a little bit of that and then give us a little bit more of the second act. A single woman convinces her office rival to pose as her boyfriend for Christmas. In exchange, she helps him prepare a lucrative proposal that may inadvertently close businesses in her hometown. Okay, cool. So it's a cool setup to a coming situation. I'm not sure how the situation unfolds. So you can see there's a running theme here that I hope I can get it across to every writer as best I can. We have to go beyond the setup. So Rita, you have a great setup here. I don't know what it looks like in terms of the problem in the second act. So in exchange, she helps him prepare a lucrative proposal that may inadvertently close businesses in her hometown. Does it close the businesses in the hometown? Get to that. She helps him win a proposal by way of this process. You have another little, reference to it, which then ruins the hometown and closes all these businesses, which then has her lose her job as, hometown teacher or whatever. So we can get a little bit more specific to what the middle of that second act is going to be looking like. I know I'm repeating myself, but I see it a lot. Let's do one more. Let me just see here. I'm going to go all the way down just randomly. Sorry, everybody. I know there were a lot of log lines presented here. I have 67. There's no way I can get to all of them. Here's a TV series. I haven't hit a TV series. Hermione, a Bosnian war survivor turned homicide detective and a talented but ostracized financial investigator must join forces to solve crimes where lines blur between victims and perpetrators. Okay, so again, I'd like more specificity. So ostracized financial investigator joins forces to solve crimes. Now we've got those two people, right? Bosnian war survivor turned homicide detective and a talented but ostracized financial investigator. Join forces to solve crimes where lines blur. So I get to the vague part where lines blur between victims and perpetrators. So who are they solving crimes for? Are they independent? Are they, are they hired out by certain people? Do they work for a certain force? Why are they, trying to, what's the motive here? What's their goal? Personally, they're trying to prove this, or do they eventually find themselves as some of the perpetrators, or they're framed for something? I want to get into the real problem of the situation that will be recurring throughout the series. I keep saying the same thing. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know how else to say it other than we have a really interesting setup with these two characters, but I'm not necessarily seeing how homicide detective financial investigator is then going to be specific to what they're investigating, the types of crimes. Right now, they're just blurred between victims and perpetrators. So we can go a little bit further there. I hope this helped everybody. I know I was being kind of harsh with some of you, and I apologize. I don't mean to be harsh. I'm just trying to be as direct and specific as possible, because we all, myself included, can write better log lines. So the sooner you understand the importance of getting to what the middle of the story is, you can get the setup. All of you that I read here, you have great setups, like interesting beginning of story. I don't know what the middle of that movie looks like. So when, like, as an example, like when going to Grosse Point Blank, elite assassin in the midst of an emotional crisis, forced to return to his hometown to carry out a hit on the same weekend as his 10-year high school reunion. I can see the fact that he's going to be carrying out the hit, and then of course reconnecting with the love of his life. Then you go a little further, but when this complication occurs, he has to do this. So we're getting also to a reference of moment. And that's the hard thing with log lines. You can present a moment that you know will happen in the story as an example of the other moments in your story. A reader will get that, this type of moment, this, Jim Carrey's kid made a wish so he doesn't tell a lie. Suddenly he can't tell a lie, and he's supposed to win the biggest case of his career in order to make partner. Meanwhile, he's dealing with the fact that his ex-wife's might, all these very specific things. So we want to get into specificity, and hopefully I was able to help some of you. I apologize that if I couldn't get to everybody's log lines. I stated it up front. I had the disclaimer. I apologize. Ash, I like your way of critiquing, giving advice. I think it's helpful. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, I mean, that's the goal here with myself and just the ISA in general. We want all of you to be great. And I think it's important to remember that from a industry standpoint too. Every single executive who sits at a desk in every company, I don't care where they are begging for something great to come across their desk, because they're constantly saying no. They have all the reasons to say no to projects, 100 reasons to say no, but they want to say yes. So we have to be so vigilant in the process of being taking care with word choice, making sure a logline is working. Buy the logline review service through the ISA. They'll help you develop this and give you very specific notes to your project, but also in the development of your project in general, right? Not as a way to just present the idea, but at the outset of developing your project, use the logline to come up with some ideas, or go, okay, so if this person is going to do that, I'll write it out possibly as a little bit of a logline, but no, I might be able to switch it around a little bit. And suddenly you're just brainstorming in a logline. And once you get to a point where you're like, I think that's what the situation is in the middle of my movie, now you can develop there. You're developing from kind of a non-linear approach. You're not just starting from the beginning and trying to make the story work. You're coming from, well, what's that unique situation that I'm going to see over and over again, the middle of the story. And from a TV series standpoint, the type of moment that's going to occur in every episode. Then you can build out around it. What are the relationships that are going to make it more difficult, more interesting, more engaging? And so you're building out from the middle, or building from the middle out. Let's see, tell us about your logline class. Well, so the class itself is all encompassing. It's not just loglines. So I go from concept to character development to structure development to page work and formatting. So it's all encompassing. You can take any project that, either you want to rewrite or start from week one, and you go through the assignments, and you can do that on your own. It's self-guided. I have video, I have audio, and of course, written lectures. There you go. I just did that for Max and Jamie. So let me do this. I'll keep everybody on here. Let me just make a little code, and I can give you the code right now, and you can go over there. But it's pretty simple. You just go to thecraftcourse.com. I'll type it in here, thecraftcourse.com, and I will have you enter this code. I'm going to create it right now. Let's see here. The code, what should I call it? What is this? No expiration. I don't want it to expire. Let's say logline webinar 21. So you'll go to thecraftcourse.com and you'll enter that code, logline webinar 21. And you'll just go through the process as if you're purchasing the course, because you technically are. But when purchasing, you will enter that code and you'll get 50% off. So it'll be like $49.50 or whatever it is. You can keep the course for forever. So if you don't want to use it, don't use it. But if you wanted to go back to it for multiple projects, you can. But it's pretty straightforward. If you have questions, you can email me, max@thestoryfarm.org. And there you have it. This was recorded. This webinar was recorded, and I'll send that out probably either later tonight, or no, I'm sorry, I have to send it to my editor. He's going to edit it, and then we're going to put it onto the ISA website. So within probably the next 2 or 3 days. It's only going to be available for a week to non-Connect members. Yeah, good name, Max. And so you want to take advantage of that. I'll follow up to let everybody know when it's live on the ISA website. Also, one last little just marketing pitch. If you're not following the ISA's YouTube channel, you should be. It's totally free. You just go to YouTube, click subscribe. We have over 1,000 videos on there. It's all free. It's like an education in and of itself with a ton of interviews. We're going to be posting a lot more there as well. In short time. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. Work on your log lines, not just from a presentational aspect, but from a developmental one. Develop your idea through the log line and then expand from there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. I will be back next month, and you'll get little reminders as to what that event's going to be covering, but will be probably the last or second to last Wednesday of August. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you soon.